Welcome to the Matt Bernier Show.
Brody's Cause has work to do to catch them. They're coming to the 8th pole. Cards of Stone 4th. Cherry Wine is 5th up on the outside. My Man Sam is on the grandstand side in 6th. Brody's Cause just keeps grinding away. Cherry Wine is running late on the outside. Brody's Cause at the 16th pole. Chased by Cherry Wine. My Man Sam running huge from last, but Brody's Cause in front. Brody's Cause for Luis Saez to win the Toyota Bluegrass from My Man Sam.
It is Outwork and Matt King Cole, and the two of them turn for home together. Shagaf is trying to come and get them. Tale of Saval is running a big one, and Adventus is closing through an opening on the inside into the final furlong. It is Outwork in front. Adventus trying to go for an upset up the rail. It is Outwork and Adventist. 1-2. They will decide the Wood Memorial. Outwork and Adventist. Here's the wire. Outwork and Adventist. Bob heads under the wire in the wood.
The $1 Million Santa Anita Derby and Exaggerator has gone straight past them like they were tied to the rail. At the 8th pole, Exaggerator 5 lengths over Uncle Lino, More Spirit and Dancing Candy. But Exaggerator is finishing with conviction this afternoon. Exaggerator, an absolutely brilliant victory in the Santa Anita Derby over More Spirit, Uncle Lino.
Super Saturday's in the books. We've got one more big Derby prep here to come up tomorrow afternoon. Welcome in the Matt Bernier Show live from the DRF studios here in Midtown Manhattan. If you're watching on DRF Live, thanks for the simulcast viewing. If you're listening podcast version, that's going to be on YouTube, SoundCloud, DRF.com later on in the day. I think at this point it's pretty safe to say with this episode, with this edition of the show, is going to be very centric and revolving around that is Kentucky Derby and the Derby preps themselves. We're going to go into some other races as well. We've got 6 that we'll actually handicap later on in the handicapping segments. One of them actually comes up later on today, a grade 1 on a Friday. How good is that? But let's start off by talking about the big 3, Super Saturday last weekend. And as you could tell, we saw those 3 stretch runs. 2 of them happened to come in the slop. Fingers crossed we don't have to deal with the sloppy track first Saturday in May, but we've seen in the past, I believe 3 of the past 6 years we've had a sloppy track for the Kentucky Derby, so there's no guarantee that we won't have one. But let's try to figure out what we know and what we kind of are guessing about going forward, because we talked about it when we did our weekend wrap segments, so you can find those on DRF.com on Monday afternoon. The sloppy track kind of threw some people off, and it's very difficult to analyze these races because you had some odd outcomes, some odd results. Maybe not necessarily from a win standpoint, but you had some horses run better than I think a lot of people thought they could or were capable of. And a lot of that probably had to do with the wet track. So let's try to kind of differentiate the knows, the facts, from what we think may or may not be the case. Let's start down at Keeneland in Lexington, Kentucky with the Bluegrass. The winner was Brody's Cause. He got a 91 Beyer speed figure, and I think for anyone that likes this horse, it's a positive for you going forward because you know that he can at least do it still. That Tampa Bay Derby, his first start as a 3-year-old, was a complete and utter disaster, and at least this race kind of showed you that he's still got it in him. He can still run a little bit. Now, on the flip side, the 91 Beyer, as slow as this crop seems to be right now, and I think it's pretty safe to say that we're not dealing with last year's 3-year-olds. We don't have an American Pharoah, a Frosted, a Firing Line of Dortmund. We've got a lot of sort of middle of the road. We've got them. They're good. They're not great. They're good horses right now. At this point, maybe a 91 is good enough. He's going to need to move forward a little bit, but is a 95? Is that capable of winning the first Saturday in May? I don't really know. I think if you're looking at it, though, from a fan standpoint or a backer of Brody's Cause, you've got to at least look at it and say he's going to run all day. The distance probably isn't going to be an issue for him. The speed figure, yeah, it's probably going to need to improve a little bit, but at least you know he's still got it in him. As far as the runner-up, My Man Sam, is concerned, he got an 88 Beyer, and again, he's kind of similar to Brody's Cause, where he earned that 95 in that race 2 starts back at Aqueduct on the inner dirt, goes down, shows that he can ship, shows that he can take on better horses and run competitively. But it comes back to, are you fast enough? And again, the other thing, too, to keep in mind about these 2 runners in particular are they're one-run closers. They're going to be coming from the back of the pack. And maybe Brody's Cause has a little bit more agility. Dan Illman had brought that up, and I think it's a valid point when we did the weekend wrap, that maybe Brody's Cause has a little bit more agility when he's making his move. So either he can get into an area that some of these one-run closers can't, or he can afford to tap the brakes briefly and go on with it. Neither one of them are really my cup of tea, but at the same time, I wouldn't fault anyone that said Brody's Cause has to be viewed as a serious, legitimate contender. He has a win over the Churchill Downs surface. The 1.25 miles shouldn't be a problem for him, and he's coming into it in good form. The Wood Memorial is probably the toughest race to analyze of the 3 big preps that we had on Super Saturday, simply because, okay, Outwork was a horse going into it we thought was going to be good. He did what he was supposed to do in only his fourth lifetime start, I should say. I thought it was a very good effort. He showed that he can ship, showed that he can run in the slop. That's a big check. He's got that going for him. The problem is it came back as a very slow race, a 93 buyer, and Trojan Nation was the runner-up that was shooting down on the inside. He was 81-1 for a reason. He's not a very good horse at this stage in the game. I'm not saying down the road he can't be an okay runner, but that race was so far superior to anything he'd ever done in Southern California, and any people that pay attention to Santa Anita or now we're at Los Alamitos, and you've seen Trojan Nation, you know Trojan Nation. Trojan Nation is not a sort of horse that immediately people were thinking, yeah, that's a Derby runner. But guess what? He has 40 points right now. He's in if they choose to go down that road and he trains well, but I guess that's the toughest thing. So as far as Outwork is concerned, we know he's got good tactical speed. He doesn't have to have the lead. He can take it if it's given to him. We know that he can handle a wet track. Those are 2 big check marks. The questions ultimately become, 1, is he fast enough? Very similar to Brody's Cause. The difference is the way that they finished in this race. Brody's Cause was at least finishing. Outwork, this final 1/8 of a mile in the wood, you can go back and find that in Formulator and watch it again. That was a painful race to watch. It was like someone was just crying out, come and take this thing, and nobody did. Let's talk about the horse that probably was the one going in that had the most expectations, and he didn't run terribly, but he didn't run well either, and that's Shagaf. And at this point in time, Shagaf, for me, here's what I do know. He is not nearly fast enough to win the Kentucky Derby. He has a career best buyer of an 88, and that came in his lifetime debut. He hasn't gotten faster. Now, the one thing I will say that I like, he was making a bit of a move going into the far turn for about right around the half-mile pole. He got a little bit stopped. He got checked a little and bounced around. He's paired up 87 buyer speed figures. Maybe there is a forward move in him. It didn't seem like he was handling the track all that well early on. It seemed like he was climbing a little bit. Rad Ortiz was having his hands full. I don't know. Maybe there was a forward move, and maybe the first Saturday in May is when it comes. But there's a part of me that says that Wood as a whole right now is a tough race to be seriously going in and taking a horse that Shagaf's got a lot of a reputation. I know we just saw Mike Watchmaker's morning line odds. He has this horse at 30-1. I can't envision a scenario where Shagaf's 30-1. I think he's probably going to be somewhere in that 12 to 15 range simply because a lot of people know this horse and he's been highly publicized and highly hyped. But maybe he's sitting on his forward move. Again, the things that I know, he's not fast enough. He's going to need to run the race of his life the first Saturday in May if he's going to be victorious. Let's move to Santa Anita. This is the one from an eye-catching sort of standpoint, from a visually appeasing standpoint. Exaggerator was fantastic. Now, he made that same sort of move that he made in the San Felipe 2 starts back. The difference is he went on with it this time, and there was no sort of an issue. The 103 buyer, I think everyone's going to look at that, because at this point in time, for 3-year-olds, that's the benchmark. That 103, and guess what? We're only going to have one true Derby prep. I know the Lexington is going to be run, but we're only going to have one true Derby prep left for someone to try to eclipse or come close to that 103. I don't know if Cupid's capable. I don't know if any of the other ones are capable in the Arkansas Derby. We'll talk about that race later on. But at this point in the game, Exaggerator is strictly the horse from a speed figure standpoint that checks the boxes. He's the one that you're going to have to beat. The other things that he checked off, wet track, no problem. Mile and an eighth, I know that was a concern for a lot of people, including the connections going in. No problem. He got that done. Now, does that mean he can successfully navigate 10 furlongs? I don't know. We'll find out first Saturday in May. But these are things that we do know. He's getting better bit by bit. This is a horse who just doesn't seem to take a step back. It's improvement, improvement, improvement. Nothing drastic. And maybe this was the drastic sort of effort going forward. But at the same time, the unsureness, is that even a word? I don't know. About More Spirit for me, the horse that ran second. I love More Spirit, but boy, at the same time, he's not getting any faster at this stage in the game. And it seems like, a lot of people want to throw out the idea that maybe he just hated the track. He's run well on a wet track in the past. He ran well in that Kentucky Jockey Club at Churchill, and I know 2 wet tracks aren't the same just uniformly, but at the same time, I would have liked to have seen a little bit more running, and this is 2 times in a row. It seems like he's just running in spots. Again, last Saturday, it was a very difficult day to sort of analyze things from a wagering standpoint, from a prep standpoint going into the Kentucky Derby. But the things that we do know, that some of these top 3, the winners, yeah, okay, they can handle wet tracks, they can handle distance. Boy, I still look at it and say, with the exception of Exaggerator, if you're backing Brody's Cause or Outwork going into the Derby, you're going to have to hope that they're going to move forward probably 5 to 10 points if they're going to win the Derby, because I'm thinking we're still looking at something around a 100, and neither one of them have come close to that in their most recent preps. Let's take a quick commercial break. When we come back, we'll dive into some DRF Plus headlines. We'll give you some of the news and notes from all of our writers and correspondents around the country, and then later on in the show, we'll dive into some handicapping for this upcoming weekend. Stay with us on the Matt Bernier Show.
Daytime Southern California Thoroughbred Racing returns to Los Alamitos Thursday, April 14th, with top trainers like Bob Baffert, Doug O'Neill, and more. Play our daily late pick 4 with an average daily pool of nearly $300,000. Go to losalamitos.com for more.
Say goodbye to your inner caveman. If you're making caveman bets on pick sixes, you could be leaving money on the table. DRF Bets Ticketmaker helps you build more profitable exotic bets and place them with one click. Raise your game with DRF Bets Ticketmaker. Be a samurai with your ROI. DRF Bets Ticketmaker helps you cut out unprofitable exotic bets before they happen and be the master of profits. Raise your game with DRF Bets Ticketmaker, the exotic wagering app.
Daytime Southern California Thoroughbred Racing returns to Los Alamitos on April 14th. And horse players, don't forget our April 23rd handicapping contest for a chance to earn one of 5 guaranteed berths to the 2017 NHC. Visit losalamitos.com for more.
(12:11) East Coast, 9:11 on the West Coast. The Matt Bernier Show on DRF Live. Let's dive into some DRF Plus headlines. You can find those just below the media player, and we've got all sorts of good deals for you. As far as DRF Plus subscriptions are concerned, you can go on drf.com/plus to check all those things out. Let's take it from one of the most recent stories that we've got. That was filed by Nicole Russo, talking about the 2-year-old champ and the undefeated Nyquist. He'll be going into Churchill Downs as the wagering favorite, as a pretty heavy wagering favorite, I would imagine, for the Kentucky Derby if all continues well. He had his first serious work back as far as leading up to the Derby is concerned. 5/8 in 1:02 and 3/5 seconds. He galloped out a mile in 1:50. It sounds like Doug O'Neill was pleased. This was essentially just kind of stretching the champ's legs. Let's get him back into the swing of things. And we'll see. Again, you know, I was talking to Dan Ellman and Mike Beer in the office earlier in the week, and I said, maybe I'm just kind of at the point where I'm overthinking this whole thing. And right now, the best horse who just has not been beaten is strictly the one to beat as far as the Kentucky Derby is concerned, and that's Nyquist. I'm very, very reluctant to just buy into the fact that he's going to be able to successfully navigate that extra 1/8 of a mile after what we saw in the Florida Derby. But at the same time, you look at the rest of this crop, and we'll see what happens with Cupid tomorrow. I love Cupid. Right now, he's I'm not going to give it to you yet, but he's in the top 5. Spoiler alert when we dive into Derby talk. I don't know. Maybe I'm making too much out of it, or maybe I'm making it too hard on myself. Nyquist at this point in his career hasn't done anything wrong, and he deserves to be the Derby favorite at this point. We'll see. Seems like he got back on the beam in the right direction earlier this morning at Keeneland. Jay Privman, the Arkansas Derby, critical for some of these horses. That's, for the entire field, it's a critical race, very clearly, because there's 100 points that go to the winner, there's 40 that go to the runner-up, 20 that go to the third-place finisher. But I think Jay was alluding more toward the idea that some of these horses that have points already, whether you're talking about a horse like a Creator who's got 10 points and he's going to need a little bit of help, you know what, maybe a third-place finish is going to be enough to get him into the Derby. So there's a couple horses that are sitting on the bubble, not including the ones that have no points or only 1 or 2 points, because there are a couple that run in the Arkansas Derby. But you've got a lot of them that are just kind of teetering. I don't want to call them complete bubble boys just yet, but there's a couple of horses that have got points that they don't need a win, and they might not even need a second-place finish to get in. They could probably just do with hitting the board, and they could get enough points to get into the Derby. So it'll be very interesting to see. We'll dive into that when we talk about Derby talk. But tomorrow's Arkansas Derby, I think, is going to go a long way into sort of sorting out the proper contenders from the fringe contenders. But at the end of the day, I'm thinking we're looking at probably your heavy favorite in Nyquist. If Cupid does what I think he's capable of doing tomorrow, he'll probably be your second or third choice or co-second choice as Exaggerator. And then after that, you're going to have a whole slew of horses between 12 and 20 to 1, I would imagine. So we'll see how things go. Mike Welsh filed a report about Majesto. He is first of 3 pre-Kentucky Derby workouts the other day, 5/8 of a mile, 102.48. Gustavo Delgado is his trainer. He'll have one more work at Gulfstream Park West before they ship up to Churchill Downs. He'll have one in his final breeze before the Derby at Churchill. You'll be able to see that in the morning, KentuckyDerby.com. They have all their sort of visuals up where you can see the actual workouts, and you're obviously going to want to stay tuned here to DRF Live and DRF.com. Mike Welsh, I'm sure he'll be filing his video reports for the workouts, as he always does year in, year out. Those are some of the best videos that we have on the site all year long. And they kind of give you a pretty good insight into how these horses are handling the Churchill Downs surface weather. And it's been known to be a bit of a quirky surface from time to time, considerably, and particularly in the morning. So you're going to want to stay tuned to all that stuff as we get closer and closer. We're only 22 days from the Kentucky Derby. Mike Welsh, one other sort of story that he filed, Derby Contender Fellowship. He's been transferred to Mark Cassie's barn. He used to be with Stanley Gold. And it's an interesting sort of side story that now Stanley Gold will no longer train for Jacks or Better Farm. They've had a long, successful relationship in the past, but this horse Fellowship, he's been transferred over to the Cassie barn. Cassie, it looks like he'll have at least one starter for the Kentucky Derby, so that being Fellowship. He's a nice little horse. He runs on. He runs his race each and every time. I don't know if he can win, but I think this is the kind of horse that if you're looking to play a triple or a super in the Derby, maybe you want to use him underneath, because I think he's the kind of horse that you could be looking at saying, 30, 40 to 1, that he has that sort of running style that he'll be running at the end. Maybe he can clunk up and just pass a couple tired horses, so maybe he's one that you're going to want to keep tabs on as far as the Derby is concerned. And the final piece of news we'll talk about, DRF Plus headlines. This isn't really a DRF Plus headline, this is a DRF headline, and this is a racing headline. It's a sad one, unfortunately. Earlier this week, Zenyatta's colt that was by Warfront died. He was born on Sunday night. For precautionary reasons, they sent him and Mom to Root and Riddle, and unfortunately, and again, I'm not a vet, but apparently this is also something that can happen with humans. Many of you out there are smarter than I am, so you can figure this out. Aspirated meconium, and meconium is apparently a newborn's first stool, and it's consisting of materials that were ingested while still with the mother. And apparently it can potentially be inhaled, and it can cause pneumonia and all sorts of complications, irritation of the lungs. And no other proper medical details have been offered. But unfortunately, Zenyatta's colt by Warfront passed away a few days after he was born. And it's just been a tough go for Team Zenyatta recently. Not only have her other sons on the racetrack failed to live up to expectations, but then on top of it, you've got this unfortunate situation with the Warfront colt. So hopefully everything goes well. I don't believe Zenyatta will be bred this year. I'm not entirely sure. Don't quote me on that, but I believe that's what I had heard at one point. We'll see. There's still time, but again, just a sad situation all around, because another horse that we would have been keeping our eyes on, waiting to see 2 years from now where they would have gotten involved as far as the racing is concerned. But a sad situation for Team Zenyatta and racing as a whole. Hopefully she's going to be okay, and hopefully she'll go on to prosper as a mother as well. On that note, let's take a quick commercial break. When we come back, let's talk about a little bit lighter subject, and the subject that everyone wants to talk about this time of year, the Kentucky Derby. We'll come back with some Derby talk here on the Matt Bernier Show.
Daytime Southern California Thoroughbred Racing returns to Los Alamitos Thursday, April 14th, with top trainers like Bob Baffert, Doug O'Neill, and more. Play our daily Late Pick 4 with an average daily pool of nearly $300,000. Go to losalamitos.com for more.
Breeders' Cup Classic. Private Zone has run a 45 flat half mile and has opened up 2.5 lengths. Private Zone's got the lead close to home, and he's all by himself. Private Zone wins the Forgo.
Does your online wagering platform want you to win? If they did, wouldn't they help you win? At DRF Bets, we're all about raising your game. That's why we give our players the data, tools, and know-how that no other service can. DRF Bets is more than a place to wager. It's a platform to help you play better and win more. Brought to you by the folks who love racing as much as you do.
Just about 12:20 here on the East Coast, 9:20 on the West Coast, the Matt Bernier Show on DRF Live. It's that time of year. We talked about it at the top. We talked about Super Saturday last Saturday. Let's talk about some Derby talk. And particularly, let's talk about how the Arkansas Derby is going to affect the top 20 point standings. Mike Claudio, producer, if we could take a look at the top 20 updated leaderboard before going into tomorrow's races. And I understand the Lexington is a race that will offer points. Unless there are a ton of defections, the Lexington isn't going to affect the way that the top 20 truly looks. But here's your updated current to-the-minute Derby standings, and there's a lot of names in here, and I think a sort of, I don't want to call it breaking news, but Dancing Candy, there was some up-in-the-airness between Cliff Sice and the connections about whether or not they would go on with him, considering he ran as poorly as he did, understandably so, in the San Antonio Derby. He is going to go. They're going to the Kentucky Derby, so you can continue on with him here, listed at number 9 with 60 points. He'll be running, and guess what? He'll ensure we've got a legitimate pace signed on the first Saturday in May. As we flip over to the second page, 11 through 20, it's just one of those situations where you look at this, and the reason that the Arkansas Derby is so important, you've got Cupid there at 11. He's already got himself, he's in there, no questions asked. But going back to one of those DRF Plus sort of topics that we talked about, filed by Jay Privman, the horses that are most intriguing in tomorrow's Arkansas Derby that are bubble boys at this point, and I'm not talking, again, about the horses with 1 or 2 points. I'm talking about the horses that are right teetering. A horse like Whitmore, who's 23rd on the list with 24 Derby points. A 4th place finish might even be enough to get him involved, because I believe 4th tomorrow, correct me if I'm wrong, someone on Twitter, at Bernier_Matt, I believe it's 5 points. It may be 10. I'm going to have to take a look. But a 3rd place finish will put Whitmore squarely into the field. That would give him 20 additional points. That would put him at 43. He'd be in. Dazzling Gem, my son, he's 25th on the leaderboard. He's got 20 points at this stage in the game. Again, a 3rd place finish, 40 points is probably going to put him in. And I'm stunned to see just how tight this leaderboard is in that sort of bottom area, because for the longest time, for the first 2 years of this sort of point system, 20 points have been basically the threshold. And we're looking at considerably more than that this year. It looks like it's going to be a low 30, a 32, 33 maybe is going to be the cutoff point to get into the field of 20. So it'll be interesting to see. Again, Dazzling Gem, my son, he's got 20 points. He's 25th on the leaderboard. Sudden breaking news, 28th. We saw he had a little bit of a trip in that Rebel Stakes most recently. He'll be running tomorrow afternoon. He has 10 points. So he's in a position where 3rd may not even be enough. And we've talked about it with all these 100-point Derby preps to the winner. 100 points to the winner, 40 to the runner-up. You run in the top 2, you're probably in. So if Sudden Breaking News does what he's supposed to do, takes care of business, he'll probably put himself in position to get into the Derby with a top 2 finish. But again, with a 1-run closer, that's such a salty sort of scenario where there's no guarantee that he's going to get a clean trip. A horse like Discreetness, he has 10 points as well. He's 29th. Discreetness is the kind of horse, though, that I wonder, let's say he ran 3rd and got 20 points on top of his 10, and he ended up with 30. I wonder if the connections would think long and hard before saying, you know what, even if for some reason he drew in, let's pass on the Derby. Let's refocus on a race maybe like the Preakness, give him a couple extra weeks, or maybe a race that's a little bit shorter like the Pat Day Mile, 1-turn mile, because Discreetness, I think he's got ability. I'm not sure how far ultimately he's going to want to go, but the one that's most intriguing to me, and we'll talk about him when we dive into the Arkansas Derby, is Creator. Creator's 31st on the list. He has 10 points. A 3rd place finish, I'm not entirely sure, very similarly to what we just talked about, Discreetness. I don't know that a 3rd place finish is going to be enough to get him into the field. If he runs in the top 2, he's in. Case closed. Creator has that 1-run running style that I think is the kind that a lot of people are going to look at. The difference between he and the horse that we were talking about earlier, like Fellowship, I wonder if Fellowship's the kind of horse that you can get a little bit cute with and you can use in 3rd or 4th to round out a trifecta or a superfecta. A horse like Creator, if he continues to improve, I'm wondering if he's the kind of horse that you can look at and say, with a horse like Dancing Candy in, you're going to have a couple other horses that like to be forwardly placed and ensure that we'll have an honest pace. I'm wondering if Creator's the kind of horse that might be able to be sneaky, under the radar as far as a win candidate is concerned. I don't know if he'll be a likely one, again, with that 1-run running style, but Creator's all of a sudden become an interesting runner. He's going to need to take care of business tomorrow in the Arkansas Derby, though. Now, this upcoming piece right here, my current Derby top 5, before we throw up any graphics, This literally might have been the most difficult part of this entire show from start to finish. When we were doing the 3 weeks of prep before we came live, when we launched it, we've had guests on, phones, whatnot. This top 5 may have been the most difficult piece simply because, I'm going to be honest with you, I hate them all. I don't love anyone. I love my son Dazzling Gem. I can't put him in the top 5 right now and look at you with a straight face and say he's one of the 5 most likely win candidates. That's crap. He's not. He probably doesn't even deserve to be in the field right now. We'll find out what he can do tomorrow. We're going to take this in reverse chronological order. So I'm going to start with number 5, and it's a horse that I don't love. I think he's got some ability. Let's take a look at Destin's most recent start in the Tampa Bay Derby. He was victorious in this spot. He did some good things. He beat Outwork, who came back to win his next start in the Wood Memorial. I guess the problem I have with Destin is he's just a little bit goofy. Let's take a look at the stretch run.
Brody's Cause still has about 12 lengths to make up. Lannery swings him to the outside, but he's still far back. A furlong to run. These two will dispute it. Destin on the outside. Outwork is there toward the grave, and they're locked in battle down to the wire. It's Destin on the outside. He's going to better the two. Destin, Outwork, very gamely for second.
I hated that when Javier cracked him with the whip right hand just before the wire. He flipped back to his left lead. I think he's just figuring some things out. Remember, this horse has got pedigree. He's a foal, I believe, to Creative Cause, who we saw a few years ago run 3rd in the Kentucky Derby behind I'll Have Another and Bodemeister. I think he's got some ability, and he's here basically as a placeholder until I see what happens tomorrow in the Arkansas Derby, because I think he's okay, but I'd be taking a horse coming into the Derby off of an 8-week layoff. It's very un-Todd-like. It's not my kind of horse, but again, he's got a 100 buyer in his back pocket, and he beat a next out winner in the Wood. We'll see. Destin right now is my number 5. Number 4 is More Spirit, and guess what? Number 3 is Exaggerator, and we'll be able to take a look again. You saw the full replay at the top of the show. We'll take a look at the stretch run here without Michael Rona's assistance, but this is the kind of horse that More Spirit, I don't know what to do with at this point in the game, because this is 2 races in a row that he's just kind of bounced up and down, and he hasn't finished all that well. Exaggerator's rolling here on the outside under Kent DeSormo. Changes leads, goes on with it, mile and an eighth, no issue. There are just so many things about Exaggerator that I think, Mike Watchmaker's brought it up in the past, and I think there's a lot of credibility and validity to it. This horse had all the pace to close at. He loves a wet track. And some of the other horses, mainly his most notable competition, maybe they hated it and maybe they went too fast early, namely Dan's and Candy. I don't know, but he looked good. He looked very good. I could make the case that that was the best visual performance from the 3-year-old thus far. As far as the Derby prep is concerned, I'm still going to give the slight edge to Cupid, but boy, Exaggerator looked very good in that Santa Anita Derby last weekend. And More Spirit, I don't know what to do with. I had him at number 2 for a long time. He continues to slide down my list. We're going to have to wait and see how he rebounds. Let's take a look at Nyquist. I've got him at number 2. This is the stretch run of his Florida Derby. Larry Colmus with the call.
And they're into the stretch, and it's Nyquist and Mohaman in their bicoastal battle at the top of the stretch. On the inside is Mahesto in third. Nyquist has moved away. Mohaman has no answer today. On the inside is Mahesto, and then comes Fellowship. Nyquist drifting out to the center of the track, but he's far in front, and Nyquist is still unbeaten. He has won the Florida Derby.
A lot of sharp people have told me that they think that he may have been goofing around a little bit. Richard Migliori tweeted after the race, we went back and forth real quick, and he said that he thought that maybe the horse was just getting a little bit goofy, and that's why he went to his left lead. Look, I'm going to defer to Mig, because the man's ridden the horses multiple times, and he's won all sorts of races. I'm just terrified of betting a horse as the favorite when I look at that pedigree, and I go, I don't know how far you want to go. I look at your running style, you're forwardly placed, you're going to have to be sitting off of Dan's and Candy, and then for your final 16th of a mile, you're on your left lead drifting out. It's just one of those things that I'm terrified of. But as I said earlier, maybe I'm making it way too difficult and he's just the best horse in the race. We'll find out. Number 1, Cupid. I thought his Rebel run was very good. Let's take a look at the stretch run from Pete Aiello.
With less than a quarter of a mile to go, they went 3/4 and 112 flat. Cupid trying to seal the deal, but here's Whitmore down the outside for Ortiz Jr. Gray Sky back third. It's Cupid or Whitmore to the wire. Cupid on the inside. Whitmore trying to get past on the outside, but Cupid has something in reserve, and Cupid wins the Rebel. Whitmore was second.
That was just very clearly to me the best 3-year-old prep of the year. I just loved everything about it. And again, I said that Exaggerator's 3-year-old prep in the Santa Anita Derby, or his final one, was visually fantastic, and you could make the argument that that was the best. You could make the argument. For me, that's still the best, Cupid's, and we'll see what he can do tomorrow. I'm expecting him to do very, very well, and it'll be very interesting to see. Does he sit off of an early speed ball, or does he go right to the front? I think that outside post is going to allow Martin Garcia a few more options. So let's take a look at my top 5. It's in reverse chronological order. So Destin is number 5, More Spirit is 4, Exaggerator 3, Nyquist 2. Cupid is the head of the class right now for me as far as the Derby is concerned. And yes, my son, Dazzling Gem. If for some reason he runs well tomorrow, maybe he can crack the top 5 going into next week and going forward toward the first Saturday in May. Let's take a quick commercial break here on the Matt Bernier Show. When we come back, we'll dive into handicapping. It'll be kind of a bonus. We have 1 race on Friday, we have 4 on Saturday, and we have 1 on Sunday. Stay with us. .31 on the East, 9:31 on the West Coast. The Matt Bernier Show on DRF Live. Let's dive into some handicapping. We've just had jam-packed couple shows the past few weeks, so we haven't had real proper time to go over any sort of races. This week I felt like this was the best opportunity for us to get back into because guess what? The next few weeks we're going to have more guests, and handicapping as far as individual races on the weekend are concerned, probably going to be limited. So I figured let's get a lot in. We've got a good racing weekend ahead of us. Let's start off with the race today. And I believe it's actually, I don't know if today is, Mike Claudio, is today the race of the day, the Makers 46 Mile? It is not. It's just a stakes preview that we've done. You can find that on drf.com/videos. Dan Illman and I went over this race, but guess what? I'll give you a couple little tidbits here. As far as the most likely winner of this race is concerned, I think it's hard to argue with the fact that the number 3, Heart to Heart, is the most likely winner of the race simply based on his recent form. He's rattled off 3 consecutive 104 buyer speed figures. I don't like that. I think at this point in his career, he's a confirmed need to lead type. And with a horse like Shining Copper that's also in this race, he's going to be a bit of a pain in the rear end for him, I think, from start to finish. It'd be very interesting to see what kind of trip he works out in here, because I don't think he's as fast as Shining Copper is early, and it all is going to depend on what Paco does aboard Shining Copper. If he sends, I don't think Heart to Heart has the ability to sit off of him and pass horses. He's the ultimate sort of Roberto Duran for me, no mas. If somebody's ahead of me, I don't want to go on with it. I'm going to pack it up and bail out. So he's the most likely winner of this race simply based on his recent form. He has that sort of good early speed. Maybe he will be able to get to the front, but I'm not going to be banking on it at a short price. I have a live long shot in here that I really, really like. Depending on the odds, I may actually have a little wager on him. I think the number 6 Conquest Typhoon, based on his most recent start down at Gulfstream Park, this is a horse I've never been a huge fan of. He has ability, though. Let's call it for what it is. Call a spade a spade. He can run a little bit. He had really good form as a 2-year-old. His 4th in the Breeders' Cup Juvenile Fillies Turf, or the Juvenile Turf, I should say. He's a colt. I thought it was very good considering the trip. I think he's sitting on a big effort here. He should get that pace to run it that we were just talking about. No reason to think that he can't get along. Maybe he's not good enough to win at this stage in his game, in his career. But I look at him and say, there's no reason he can't get a piece of this. Run 2nd, 3rd, or 4th, spice up some exotics at a big number. Let's move on to Saturday. 2 races down at Oaklawn Park. Let's start off with the Oaklawn Handicap. And this is a race that I had a very difficult time giving you anything cute. I'm not even going to give you a live long shot. I think there are 2 most likely winners in this race, and strictly 2 most likely winners. Melatonin and FNX are the 2 horses coming out of the Santa Anita Handicap. It'll be interesting to see how the wagering goes. I made each one of them 3-1, and it's going to come down to wagering and odds for me. Because at this stage in the game, I can't separate the 2. Melatonin, if you believe each of his past 2 starts, he's just a completely different animal on dirt going 2 turns. Look, he was nothing to write home about as a sprinter, but guess what? His 2-turn races thus far have been fantastic. And if you believe him, boy, he's coming into this race, and you can make the case that he's the horse to beat. He's got good early speed, and it'll be interesting to see how Joe Talamo plays his hand? Does he just go right to the front? Because I don't think he's a need-the-lead type. Or does he sit off of another horse, maybe like a Financial Modeling or someone else? As far as FNX is concerned, thought he ran well, all things considered, in the Santa Anita Handicap. First start off of a long layoff, off that runner-up, I should say. Actually, he beat Opportunity in the Grade 1 Clark Handicap in his final start as a 4-year-old. Got some time off, came back in the Santa Anita Handicap as the wagering favorite, going 10 furlongs, cross-country. That's no small feat. And then you factor in the fact that he apparently broke out in hives before the race. Barbara Livingston's got beautiful visual of that. You could see just how irritated his skin was. And the fact that he ran a decent third. I'm not going to hold that against him. I've always been an FNX fan. Any of you that have been paying attention, where we've gone through and done all these stakes previews, I've liked this horse going back to when I first started here at the Racing Forum. So I think there's some ability here. The question is going to be how they bet this race. And Dan Illman seems to think that they're going to hammer FNX, and maybe they will. Maybe they'll look at it and say he was runner-up to American Pharoah. He's got a Grade 1 victory under his belt. And Melatonin is sort of, you got to prove it to me again. And if that's the case, I wouldn't argue with the public. But at the same time, I think from a wagering standpoint, that could leave the door open for a very nice opportunity on a horse like Melatonin, who I think is a decent runner at this point. And you can make the argument. He's one of the leading lights as far as the Classic division is concerned. Moving on to the other race that we'll be talking about from Oaklawn Park tomorrow afternoon. It's the Arkansas Derby. It's a Grade 1. It's $1 million. 100 points go to the winner. 40 go to the runner-up. 20 go to third. And Dan Torres, my buddy on Twitter, he sent me a tweet saying that fourth gets 10 points. So that'll be important going forward for some of those horses that we talked about that are on the bubble. The most likely winner, Captain Obvious here, Cupid. I think he's just a very talented runner. And again, I feel like a fool because on DRF Live, before they went 2 turns with this horse, I called him a bum, a bit of a plug. $900,000, he's not that good. Well, guess what? Ever since he's gone 2 turns, he's been a different animal. And unless he throws a clunker tomorrow, I know who I'm going to be picking for the Kentucky Derby, and it's probably going to be Cupid. We'll see. There's still a long way to go in training, and I shouldn't probably say such a declarative sort of thing, but it'll be very difficult for me to get off this horse if he runs a representative race tomorrow. If you're looking for a live long shot, I think we're going to take a look at that Rebel action, and you'll be able to see Cupid on the front end. You're also going to want to look at another grade coming from the back of the pack, and that's Creator. I thought Creator ran a very good race in this spot. Considering this was his first start against winners, and it was a decent enough field. And you're going to see him coming right now down the outside. He's got the White Silks, the Windstar Farm Silks. The way that he finishes, I thought this is a very good effort, and this is a horse he's bred to run all day. I think it's an interesting sort of move going forward. There's no reason to think that he can't continue on, and he's going to get another honest pace in front of him. Now, maybe he's not as good as a Cupid or any of these other horses that go in this spot, but at the end of the day, I think Creator's an interesting runner that can take a step forward here and get involved at a decent number. I believe he's 10 in the morning line. I made him 12-1. If he goes off in that range, maybe I could be enticed, but again, for me, a lot of it is Cupid. And let's call it for what it is. Be totally transparent here. I'm rooting for Dazzling Gem. I probably won't be betting him unless he goes off at some foolish number. I don't think he's fast enough right now. I just want him to run third. I don't need him to win this race tomorrow. But full transparency, full disclosure, yeah, I'm rooting for Dazzling Gem. Tomorrow on DRF Live, when we're going over this race, I'm probably going to wax poetic about my son Dazzling Gem. I hope he wins because I got skin in the game for the Derby. But guess what? I don't think he's the likely winner. I don't think he's the most likely sort of live long shot. I think Creator's an interesting runner in the Arkansas Derby, but they're all going to have to beat Cupid. Let's take a quick commercial break so I can take a quick drink of water. When we come back, we'll dive back into 3 more races, 2 of them tomorrow, and then 1 on Sunday. A very, very enticing race on Sunday if you're trying to play against what I think is going to be a heavy favorite. Stay with us.
Here's Macho Uno. They're off in the Breeders' Cup Classic. Private Zone has run a 45 flat half mile and has opened up 2.5 lengths. Private Zone's got the lead close to home and he's all by himself. Private Zone wins the Forgo.
Say goodbye to your inner caveman. If you're making caveman bets on pick sixes, you could be leaving money on the table. DRF Bets Ticket Maker helps you build more profitable exotic bets and place them with one click. Raise your game with DRF Bets Ticket Maker. Be a samurai with your ROI. DRF Bets Ticket Maker helps you cut out unprofitable exotic bets before they happen and be the master of profits. Raise your game with DRF Bets Ticket Maker, the exotic wagering app.
Back here, 1240 on the East Coast, 940 on the West Coast, the Matt Bernier Show on DRF Live. Let's dive into some more handicapping. Again, a great weekend of racing. You're going to want to stay tuned all day tomorrow to DRF Live in general. You're going to want to see the news feed below us with all of our latest from the handicappers, writers, and reporters across the country. And then at 3 Eastern, you'll be able to see myself, Dan Ellman, and Mike Beer. We'll bring you through all the biggest racing tomorrow afternoon, culminating with the Grade 1 Arkansas Derby from Oaklawn Park. Let's dive into the Jenny Wiley. I think it's a really fun race, and very clearly, there's one name that stands out above all, and that's Tepin. This is a mare who's just tremendous at this point in her career. She's coming off of a 107 Beyer speed figure victory down at Tampa Bay. I think she's strictly the horse to beat. I think anybody else that would argue is crazy. She's 4-5 on the morning line. She's probably going to be even shorter than that. And that's a fascinating thing to me, because we're not talking about a field full of ham and eggers. This is a really nice field. There's a reason it's a Grade 1. But if you take a look at Tepin's most recent start, and you can right now if we're on DRF Live, and if you're watching on the YouTube or on DRF.com, you know, she had to run down an absolute sort of runaway speed. And look, credit where credit's due. I thought Johnny V rode Isabella Sings perfectly in this race. Drop the pedal and go and make her come and catch you. Well, guess what? Julian Leperoux at no point looked concerned. He goes on with it. She's just the picture of what you want to see in a racehorse, and it doesn't seem like she's slowing down any. The question coming into this year was distance for her. Does she really want much more than a mile? Because she had been vulnerable. She lost to DeCita at a mile and a 16th or a mile and an 8th up at Saratoga. Guess what? You're going to get DeCita again in this spot in the Jenny Wiley. But I think she's just continued to mature, and she just gets better and better. Tepin is very clearly the horse to beat in the Jenny Wiley. I think she's going to be probably shorter than 4-5. But if you're looking for a live long shot, and I will admit, and this goes out to all the people that are giving me crap on Twitter, calling it East Coast bias. It's nonsense. I pay attention mostly to Southern California racing. It's nonsense. I love Illuminate. I think Illuminate's a really talented runner for Michael McCarthy. The problem is, I just think that she's catching just a ridiculously tough spot. Let's take a look at her most recent start. I thought she was visually fantastic in this spot. I know she was facing inferior competition, but come on now. She can be forwardly placed. She can sit just off of some runners. And the way that she finished, she gave off every indication that she's got just as good a turn of foot as some of these top contenders do. And I love the fact that I'm going to get the jump on some of these horses that are going to be coming from the back of the pack. I don't think any of these horses from overseas coming over from Europe, I think they're both good. I don't think they're superstars. They've got a nice late kick, but they're going to be coming from the back of the pack, and this is going to be their first time with North American style running. I just think Illuminate's a very sneaky play. 30-1 on the morning line. I made her right around 19. Again, you got to consider how much money do you want to lose against Tepin. But the way that I'm looking at that race is, let me try to get a live to Illuminate in a double, where maybe I'm only going to have $2 or $5 in to a double. Let me grab a horse or two from the race prior to that and try and link them up with Illuminate, knowing that, you know what, if I only have a $5 double with two horses going from the first race into this race, okay, I have a $10 investment. And depending on what the odds ultimately will be, chances are in the double, Tepin is going to be ridiculously short, and anyone else is going to be some sort of a giant number. So my goal going into this is trying to be alive in a double to Illuminate, going in the Jenny Wiley. All disclosure, full disclosure, Tepin is way the horse to beat. I don't think I'm breaking any news to any of you out there. The Los Angeles at Los Alamitos, it's a short field. And it's the ultimate sort of scenario of, if you believe the figure, if you're a Beyer speed figure player, W. Giles right now is the fastest horse in the race. If you're a class player, W. Giles has no chance in this race. If you're looking at class, the most likely winner, and I name him the most likely winner very, 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 very tentatively, is Wild Dude. I don't think Wild Dude is the same Wild Dude we've seen, though, because last time out, he never changed leads in his most recent start, and he was asked basically the entire way. This is a horse that I just don't know if he wants to do it anymore. You also have to factor in this race is at 5.5 furlongs at Los Alamitos. Los Alamitos 1 can be as super sort of horse-for-course kind of track, and it's very tight. It looks like a paperclip. And some horses love it, and some horses hate it. I don't know if Wild Dude's going to be able to take to it. And at 5.5 furlongs, I don't want to find out. W. Giles, again, from a class standpoint, people are going to look at it and say, 4 races back, you could have had him for $16,000. He doesn't class up. But guess what? Based on what I've seen recently in his most recent start, which you can take a look at here, this is a stakes caliber sort of performance. Now, I understand he was beating Alpine Luck. Now, Alpine Luck is a horse that doesn't like to win very often. And again, we're dealing with sort of starter allowance level, lower. They're good. They're quality runners. They'll show up, but they're not stakes caliber. W. Giles, ever since he's been claimed, he's been a different animal. And I think he's really going to come into this. You can make the case that he's controlling speed, and maybe when one of these other speeds goes early on, whether it's a Raise the Secret or it's a Giannis drawn just to his outside, maybe the pressure will crack him. If I get anything above 4-1, I'm going to take a shot on this horse simply because everyone else in this race is in terrible form. San Onofre's 3 most recent starts. I know 3 back he won the Midnight Loot. His 3 most recent starts have been terrible. He's going to need, and now he gets a blinker edition. They're changing the tactics with him. I don't know what to make of that. Raise the Secret, we know Raise the Secret. Sir Kip, no disrespect to the connections. So if Sir Kip wins, my goodness. Wild Dude, again, he's the class of the field. He's a multiple Grade 1 winner. Boy, on his most recent start, I can't back him off that. Giannis, I think, is an interesting runner. I think he has that sort of scope for improvement simply because he's lightly raced. We've only seen him 5 times. But guess what? The 98 buyer is the highest last out in the field, and that belongs to W. Giles. He's a live long shot for me in the Los Angeles. Now let's talk about the Sunday race. It's the Beaumont, and I know a lot of people on Twitter are very excited. It's a 5-horse field. You've got a horse for Brian Lynch called Lightstream, who's going to be coming back and making her second lifetime start, first time against winners. In her first lifetime start, she earned a 103 buyer, 103. I will encourage you to go back, and Dan Illman and I later on today will be doing a preview of this. I would encourage you to go into Formulator and pull up the replay. She ran, don't get me wrong. But if that is a true 103 buyer speed figure, it was the worst 103 buyer speed figure, worst triple-digit buyer I've ever seen. Again, this is not meant as a knock against the horse. It's just, I think a lot of people are going to look at this and say, 103, she's nearly 20 points faster than the next horse in the race. I don't think that's the case, and I'm praying that we've got a lot of FIG players out there on Sunday afternoon, because I think you're setting yourself up for a rude awakening where this horse is really actually closer to a mid-80, which is still a nice runner considering that was her first lifetime start. I'm not taking anything away from her. But from a wagering standpoint, a 103? 103, you're telling me that she's as fast as she's faster than Songbird, she's faster than Catherine Sophia or any of these other horses. I'm a little skeptical of that, especially when you go into Formulator and you can pull up charts and look and see what horses have subsequently done in their most recent start. All of them seem to be coming back down to earth, and it's also worth noting there are certain horses in this race that she won, I should say. Jay Latache ran 3rd. Jay Latache was well beaten, just absolutely handled. Jay Latache came back to win with a 74. It's worth noting that the race that she ran at Gulfstream on March the 6th was the fastest race of her career by something stupid like 16 points. She's never run anything close to that before, and thus far, I know she came back to win, but she hasn't come back to win with a similar number. There's a part of me that thinks that 103 is a little bit bogus. Again, do with it what you will. I know a lot of people are excited, and look, if she backs that up, we're talking, we got something here. But I'm going into this under the impression that that number is way inflated, and I'm looking at this saying that I'm licking my chops to try to take a shot against. Now, the problem I have is, who do you take a shot against with? I'm torn between the 2 Our Girls of Charmer and the 3 Kins of Kisses. You're going to need to take a look at the preview that we do, Illman and I, later on today to see who I ultimately go with. But vulnerable favorite Sunday in the Beaumont for me is the number 1 Lightstream, making her first start against winners and her first start outside of South Florida. Let's take a quick commercial break as we turn for home here on the Matt Bernier Show on Friday, April the 15th. When we come back, we'll give you an update and a rundown as far as tournaments are concerned for this weekend, a DRF Live rundown, as well as a couple other little things here and there. Stay with us.
Here's Machono! They're off in the Breeders' Cup Classic. Private Zone has run a 45 flat half mile and has opened up 2.5 lengths. Private Zone's got the lead close to home, and he's all by himself. Private Zone wins the Forgo.
Say goodbye to your inner caveman. If you're making caveman bets on pick sixes, you could be leaving money on the table. DRF Bets Ticket Maker helps you build more profitable exotic bets and place them with one click. Raise your game with DRF Bets Ticket Maker. Be a samurai with your ROI. DRF Bets Ticket Maker helps you cut out unprofitable exotic bets before they happen and be the master of profits. Raise your game with DRF Bets Ticket Maker, the exotic wagering app.
Turning for home on the Matt Bernier Show on DRF Live, 12:51 on the East Coast, 9:51 on the West Coast. Let's take a look at what we have this weekend as far as tournaments are concerned in the DRF family of tournaments. Take a look at that slide if we could. NHCQualified.com, Saturday, April the 16th. That's tomorrow. $190 entry fee. Up to 4 NHC packages are going to be awarded. 3 of them will be guaranteed. 240 entries, 1 package for every 60. And just for those of you that are unfamiliar with the NHC, the National Handicapping Championship happens every January out in Las Vegas. This year again, it's at the Treasure Island Resort and Casino. Look, we've got a lot of good things going on. You definitely want to be involved because not only is there a ton of cash involved, but if you win, you get an Eclipse Award. You're awarded as the champion handicapper of the year. So definitely something you want to get involved with. Take a look at that. Saturday, April the 19th, NHCQualified.com. Dark week on BCQualified.com, but DRFQualified.com, we've got a lot of stuff going on. Saturday, April the 16th, $210 entry fee. Up to 2 Santa Anita Preakness Challenge packages, 56 entries capped, 1 package for every 28 entries. The Santa Anita Preakness Challenge, again, it's a live money contest out at Santa Anita Park the weekend of the Preakness. You're not going to be going to Pimlico. I can't stress that enough. I hope I'm making this abundantly clear. The Santa Anita Preakness Challenge package is a live money contest at Santa Anita while the Preakness is going on. So again, $210 entry fee, 56 entries, 1 for every 28. On Sunday, April the 17th, same $210 entry fee, excuse me, 1 for every 14, 28 entries capped, up to 2 Monmouth Park Pick Your Prize package events will be going on. So again, it's a contest down at Monmouth Park where I believe you can go on to DRFQualified.com and check out all the details of it, but you've got a multitude of things that you can do where if you play in that contest at Monmouth Park, you basically get to pick your prize. Wherever you finish, you can pick a Breeders' Cup Betting Challenge seat, you can pick an NHC seat, you can pick all sorts of different stuff. So you're going to want to go on to DRFQualified.com. You can try to get in through that feeder. We also have some big news that will be breaking next week, but we'll save that for next week. But yeah, a lot of good things going on at the DRF family of tournaments this weekend. NHCQualified.com, DRFQualified.com. Again, a dark week on BCQualified.com. Let's take a look at tomorrow's DRF Live slate if we could. Again, starting at 3 Eastern, noon Pacific. You see we've got a lot of grade and stakes action coast to coast. Heavy Keeneland, heavy Oak Lawn, a little bit of Low Sal, a little bit of Aqueduct sprinkled in there. The highlight of the day, the Arkansas Derby. That's not to overshadow a race like the Lexington for 3-year-olds or the Jenny Wiley, which, again, we'll see Tepin, or even the Oak Lawn Handicap, where we'll see Melatonin and FNX. But the highlight is the Arkansas Derby, where the winner and the runner-up, they will get themselves into the starting gate first Saturday in May at Churchill Downs. And who knows, maybe even a couple other horses. If they run 3rd or 4th, maybe they can sneak their way into the top 20 as far as the Derby standings are concerned. This week was a little bit light for me as far as video is concerned. Wasn't sure what we had for a fun video. And Mike Claudio sent me an email and he goes, "You ever seen a horse playing piano?" I said, no, I haven't. So, without further ado, Beethoven. One more time. I could do that, but I couldn't do that with my mouth. It's an interesting sort of little video there where, again, Beethoven, see what I did there? Yeah, hooves. Good looks, Claudio, on the find there. We'll have something else next week. And again, after this week is done, after tomorrow is finished, we'll basically know who the top 20 are as far as the Derby is concerned. We have 21 days from tomorrow until the first Saturday in May, where we'll have the Kentucky Derby at Churchill Downs. And at that point, the next 2 weeks, they're probably going to be pretty Derby-centric, Derby-heavy. We'll have some guests on, as we have in the past. And we'll go on and we'll give you some previews, some updates as far as the Kentucky Derby itself is concerned. And then we'll wait and see. I don't want to announce anything because we've got to okay it with some people. But I'm thinking Derby week, maybe there's a couple things that'll go on. So we're in full throttle. And we've got the final large prep, final 100-point prep going forward for the Kentucky Derby tomorrow and the Arkansas Derby. For those of you that have been watching on DRF Live, thank you again. If those of you going podcast version, we have YouTube, we have SoundCloud, we have DRF.com. It'll be up later this afternoon. Thanks for watching. We'll be back again next Friday. Best of luck, whatever you're playing this weekend, and fingers crossed everyone has a safe trip and we get to see everything that plays out wherever you're playing. And the Arkansas Derby is obviously the mainstay. Tomorrow we'll have that for you on DRF Live at 3 Eastern.